Hey, sports fans, it's Larry Eater. I'm on RunBlogRun, and our program today is Conversations with Larry. They're actually monologues with Larry. And before we get started, I want to remind you, if you like us, please like us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, okay? And if you love us, subscribe on the YouTube. We've got over 500 videos, actually more than that, and there's some really wonderful ones there. The Cav McKenzie Halloween special is something you must see. Now, if you're an adult, I suggest that maybe a beverage or two would be good before you watch it. If you're a kid, a bag of candy corn, okay? There we go. All right, got that all covered. So, we're going to talk about the marathon that should not have been. And what marathon is that, pray tell? The 2020 Virgin Money London Marathon. Look, total respect, the whole virtual race thing. People are participating. People are doing something positive. A woman ran 2:40 in the virtual Boston Marathon, and a man ran 2:21. 19,500 people finished there. And in London, their virtual race, the last time I checked, I think it was 36,000 people had confirmed that they had completed 26.2 during the time frame. I think there was a 24-hour time frame. Where I'm going to focus on is the elite race. First time I went to London Marathon was in 2006, I believe, maybe 2005. David Bedford, who I idolize, and was the elite athlete director, race director. And my favorite thing in London each year was Mr. Bedford with the suit on the little boat that was moored by the Guaman Hotel for a cocktail party, raising his glass, thanking everybody for being there, and with the people from Boston, Tokyo, Berlin, everybody around saying, "Welcome to the world's greatest marathon." And David loved that, and that's what he made that race into. And now Spencer Barden is the elite athlete coordinator that he mentored. Spencer also handles British athletic events. He worked with Ian Stewart over there too. And this year it was a total cluster in London because they had to deal with the pandemic. And hats off to Hugh Brazier, the executive race director, and a son of the late Chris Brazier. Yes, one of the three musketeers, one of the guys who helped Sir Roger Bannister break 4 minutes to the mile. Olympian in his own right, fine writer and journal. But this year they had unique challenges in London. Now, they've had challenges before. I seem to recall about 2011, there was this exploding volcano up in Iceland, I think, that shut down air traffic for a few days. And I was sitting in an airport, and I had an hour to go. Either I was going to get to the London Marathon or not get to the London Marathon. I remember Glenn Latimer, who was elite athlete liaison and great guy, showing me on a napkin how he figured out how to get people from all around Europe to London. It was pretty cool. So they've had their challenges, but this year was the biggest challenge. They wanted to put the race on. They were doing it during a pandemic when the numbers were going up in London and in England, and they were able to do it. And what they did was they did a 2.195 kilometer course around St. James Park. It was a loop, 19 plus laps. The truth was, I really liked that. You got to watch the races develop. You got to see the athletes. The commentating by BBC was quite good. They had the women's race at 7:15 local time in the morning. They had the men's race at 10 a.m. local. and they had the wheelchair at 1 p.m. For me, that was 11 p.m. at night and 2 a.m., and by 5 a.m. I was fried. But the events were well worth staying up. Bridget Koskai and got all my little numbers down here, and Ruth Chepngetich battled for 20 plus miles, and then Bridget took off. And Bridget ended up winning in 2:18:58. People were going, well, gosh, she's run 2:14. Why the difference? Well, it was rainy, it was cold, and it was a race. It wasn't a time trial. But coming up from behind was Sarah Hall, who early on I thought was having a bad race. But the truth was, what Sarah was doing was using that brain that God gave her, and with her hubby and coach, Ryan, hanging out on the loop, giving her updates, she stayed out of trouble. She and Molly Seidel had great races, but Sarah, so happy for Sarah. 2:22:01. She passed Ruth Chepngetich with about 50 meters, 60 meters, and put 4 seconds on her. She was running like a bat out of hell. Sorry, Sarah. I just had to say that. Everything was well timed, very well calculated. Watching her move up from 5th to 4th to 3rd, Steve Cram was impressed. And when Crammy's impressed, that's kind of a big deal over in across the pond. But hats off to Bridget Koskai. She ran a tough race in tough conditions, and she won in 2:18:58. Sarah Hall ran 2:22:01, and Ruth Chepngetich 2:22:05. Then we have the men's race, and everybody was asking the wrong question. We all wanted to know how fast Eliud Kipchoge was going to run, because midweek, Kenenisa Bekele pulled out with a thigh injury, and he's had those before, and he's getting a little older. I sure wanted to see that race between the two of them, but it wasn't to be. They went through the half in 62:42, and Eliud was right there with the pacemakers, and also Shura Kitata, Vincent Kipchumba, Sisse Lema, and Mr. Moisenet, the gentleman who has won at the Dubai Marathon and who took second in Chicago behind Mo. Mo was back taking a group through the Olympic qualifier, and he stayed with them till 38, an hour 38, so about 37, 38K. It was pretty impressive. And he had a whole group of Brits do quite well and qualify. So that's pretty awesome. So thank you, Mo. It was a good thing for you, but it was also a good thing for your fellow countrymen. But what made this race interesting is it came down to the last 40 meters. This race was brutal. At 40K, Eliud was there, and then he wasn't there. What we found out later was he had some type of ear blockage, perhaps an infection, but something was bothering him, and his equilibrium was off a little bit. But if you looked at his face, you couldn't tell. What it reminded me of was in 2001 in Edmonton in the 10,000, where Haile Gebrselassie, who had 2 races that season, was having terrible Achilles problems, held off the entire field of kickers until Charles Kamathi went by with 150 meters to go and looked back and was like, Haile, where are you at? Haile didn't have another gear. Haile was grateful to get that silver medal. I thought Eliud would be able to come back. I thought he was having a gut problem. But he ended up finishing 8th in 2:06:09. And it came down to Moisenet dropping off with less than a kilometer to go. And Sisse Lema, Vincent Kipchumba, and Shura Kitata battling it out. And in the end, the tall Vincent Kachumba, I thought he was going to get by Kitata. And Kitata pulled this Houston McTeer 50-meter sprint out and won in 2:05:41 with Kipchumba in 2:05:42 and Cisse Lema in 2:05:45. And again, hats off to Spencer Barden, the elite athlete director, coordinator. Part of putting a race together is not just getting the fastest people, but getting people who react to the others. It's like a boxing match. And one of the things that London has always done with their depth is those athletes in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th compete well with the others. And you put this package together where there's several athletes who could win. The credit to Eliud Kipchoge was he didn't whine and he behaved like a champion that he is. And that's a lesson for everybody. He didn't make any excuses. He said, look, ear was bothering me a little bit. I just felt a little off. In a championship race, just a tiny bit makes the difference. The beauty of the London Marathon in 2020 was this. They did a virtual race for the 45,000 citizen runners. Bravo. They did an elite race that we could watch and share and enjoy. And in this crazy year, we needed an elite marathon. And Hugh Brazier and his team, and I've got to shout out to Penny in the communications department. They were fantastic. Penny and Ryan in communications in London had everything for us. Photos, video, content. It was fantastic. So thank you there. I just wish I could have been in London. I love the spirit of the marathon. I love doing the interviews. I love catching up with my media friends. I love getting a couple beers with Mr. Bedford and David and Tom. And, of course, saying hi to Tom's wife, Jade, who's very sweet and puts up with all of us for the week. And my British family. So I hope to see everybody next year. But hats off to London Marathon on a fantastic race. It was a race that should not have been, but it was. And it wasn't about times. It was about the competition. It's always about the competition. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun, Conversations with Larry. If you like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you love us, subscribe to our videos. You get these things. You get all kinds of other crazy stuff. Okay? Larry Eder signing out. Stay safe. If you're inside, wear a mask wherever you're at in the world. If you're outside, carry your mask. And if you can't be 6 foot separated, and I kind of think they're going to tell us you got to be 12 feet separated, keep the separation. Stay safe. Stay alive. I'll be able to have a beer with you and maybe fish and chips in another year. All right, Larry Eder signing off.